The trouble started on a Tuesday, around 3:47 in the afternoon, when I heard the knock. Not a polite knock either, the kind of knock that says, "I'm not here to chat. I'm here to scold." I opened the door and there she was, standing like a hawk in polyester slacks and a blouse that hadn't seen a washing machine in a while. Priscilla Jennings, president of the Willow Creek Homeowner Association. 5'4" of HOA fury, holding a clipboard like it was a sword. "Mr. Knox Neville," she said, her tone already sour. "I'm here about your fence." "My name's Knox, and yeah, I built a fence. A great one, too. Cedar boards, 6 feet tall, privacy slats, and stained a dark walnut that made the whole backyard feel like a retreat instead of a fishbowl. I built it myself over 2 weekends, even got my teenage son, Dylan, to help. It was exactly 6 feet tall. I measured. Twice. Nothing in the HOA guidelines said I couldn't build it. In fact, it even said fences up to 6 feet were permitted. So I raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" "It's too tall," she snapped, flipping through her papers like she was reading from the 10 Commandments of suburbia. We walked by, and it clearly exceeds the 6-foot limit. It casts a shadow on the neighbor's lawn in the late afternoon. That violates the community's sunlight access clause. I blinked. Sunlight access clause? That's not a thing. "It is," she said, tapping her clipboard. "It was added in the last revision." I stepped out onto the porch. "You mean that revision you guys emailed at midnight last Saturday?"
I didn't vote on that.
"No one did." She sniffed. "The board approved it unanimously. You, your vice president, and the treasurer all live on the same cul-de-sac. That's not a vote. That's a coffee club." Her eyes narrowed. "Regardless, you'll need to take it down. You have until Friday or we'll fine you $200 a day." And just like that, she turned and walked off, heels stabbing the pavement like she was trying to kill ants. I stood there for a beat, still holding the door open, processing what just happened. The fence was fine. It was legal. But she was serious. And I knew Priscilla. Once she set her sights on something, she didn't drop it. Last year she fined a guy for painting his door too red. The man moved out 3 months later. So, I did what any reasonable man would do. I got my tape measure. Sure enough, 6 feet. Maybe an eighth over in one spot where the ground dipped, but nothing worth a fine. I documented everything. Photos with a tape measure. Ground level shots. Even set up a camera to record where the shadow landed in the afternoon. Spoiler. It didn't even touch the neighbor's lawn until 6:45 p.m. And only for 12 minutes. The next morning, I got an official notice on my door. A printed violation from the HOA. They claimed my fence was measured at 6 feet and 3 inches and in non-compliance with revised Regulation 12.4b. I laughed out loud. 3 inches? They were measuring shadow height now? At first, I figured it'd blow over. Maybe Priscilla just wanted to puff her chest a little. But then came the second notice. Then the fine. $200. Then another. 400. Then 800. They were stacking daily. Like some HOA version of compound interest. I called the HOA office, no answer. I emailed bounce back. So I drove to the HOA office in the community center. No one at the front desk. I knocked on the president's door. Nothing. But I could hear voices inside. I cracked the door just enough to hear Priscilla's high-pitched laugh. "I don't care if it's 6 feet or 60, she said. "He's not going to tell me what to do. That fence is coming down. I'll bury him in fines if I have to." That was it. I was done playing nice. If she wanted a fight, she had won. I spent the next 3 days gathering evidence. I pulled the original HOA charter from the city records. Turns out, any amendment to the guidelines had to be approved by 60% of the homeowners. That sunlight clause hadn't even been voted on. I made copies of everything. Even got a notarized statement from my neighbor. He liked the fence. Said it blocked the dog next door from barking at his cat. Then I hired a lawyer. A good one. Kelly Tran. She wasn't cheap, but she had a reputation for making petty HOAs cry during depositions. We filed suit in small claims court for harassment, unlawful fines, and breach of procedural protocol. I also submitted a motion to suspend all fines until the legal matter was resolved. Priscilla wasn't laughing anymore. I showed up to the first hearing in a button-down and jeans. She came in with a stack of binders and a smug expression like she was expecting to win by sheer paperwork. The judge wasn't impressed. Ms. Jennings, did the HOA properly notify homeowners of the amendment? Well, we emailed it, she stammered. And were there signatures from 60% of homeowners approving the change? She flipped through her papers. We had a quorum. The judge leaned forward. That's not what I asked. She finally admitted they hadn't gotten proper approval. That alone blew the case wide open. The judge ruled to suspend all fines and ordered the HOA to pay for my legal fees. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. A week later, I got another notice. This time, they were demanding I reduce the fence to 5 feet. No mention of shadows. Just a vague, aesthetic inconsistency with community standards. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. That's when Kelly said, "Let's stop playing defense." So we filed a countersuit. Not just against the HOA, but against Priscilla herself. Abuse of power. Fraudulent fines. Misuse of HOA funds because guess what? Turns out she was using HOA coffers to pay for inspection consultants who were really just her nephew and his college buddy. We subpoenaed the HOA's financial records. And that's when everything unraveled. Thousands of dollars paid out to contractors with no licenses. Multiple payments to a landscaping evaluation team that never submitted a report. And worst of all, Priscilla had authorized a $10,000 expenditure to have decorative bushes planted along the walking trail behind her own backyard. HOA funds. For her personal landscaping. I brought all of it to the next HOA meeting. Not just my lawyer, no, I brought neighbors. I printed photos, bank statements, screenshots. I even had a projector. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Within 5 minutes, a petition circulated to remove her from the board. 50 signatures. Then 70. By the end of the night, she was voted out. But justice wasn't done yet. The city got involved after we submitted financial documents. Priscilla Jennings was arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. Last I heard, she was trying to plead down to probation. But the cherry on top? The judge ordered the HOA to rebuild the fence. Not just rebuild it, replace it with a new one at their expense. 7 feet tall. Premium cedar. Same stain. Better design. I watched them install it while sipping iced tea from the porch. Dylan helped them carry the boards. He charged $20 an hour. Some fences keep things out. That one? It kept the nonsense in its place. The Monday after the new fence went up, I stepped outside to find a clipboard wedged between the mailbox and the flag. No envelope. No signature. No explanation. Just a typed sheet with a heading. Notice of unapproved structural addition. At first, I thought it was some leftover paperwork from the judge's ruling, but then I read the second line. Subject: unauthorized pergola installation. I blinked. Pergola? I didn't have a pergola. I had a patio cover built back in the spring, simple slatted wood structure, same paint as the house, built to code and permitted by the city. It had been there for months. Suddenly, it was a violation. I took one long look at the paper and walked straight to the garage. My neighbor, Terrence, was already there, pulling in his trash bins. "They're still coming after you?" he asked, watching me wave the notice. If I'm breathing, apparently that's grounds for a fine. Terrence shook his head and motioned me closer. "You need to see something." He led me around to the side of his house, where a small utility box had been half covered by overgrown hedges. He crouched and opened a hatch on the side. Inside was a tiny blinking lens. They installed cameras, he said quietly. I caught one of their inspectors installing it last Thursday. Said it was to monitor community compliance. I stared at the lens. That's on your property. I know. I checked the survey lines. It's 6 inches over. They didn't ask. Just drilled it in. I took a photo with my phone and backed away. They're spying now? It made sense. The bogus pergola accusation, how else would they have known about it unless they'd been watching? And it wasn't just me. I started asking around. Quietly. Casual questions at the mailbox. Quick chats while walking the dog. By Wednesday, I had a list of 6 neighbors who'd been hit with sudden violations. All of them had supported the movement to boot Priscilla. One of them, a retired nurse named Maria, had been fined for excessive wind chime resonance. We were being targeted. I called Kelly Tran. She listened, then said, "You're not dealing with a rogue president anymore. You've got a board that's trying to consolidate power." I met with her the next afternoon at her office. She'd already pulled the HOA's new filings. They had amended their bylaws again this time, shifting the authority to issue fines directly to the board's compliance officer, a man named Ronald McVeigh. No voting required.
No oversight.
Who is he? I asked. According to LinkedIn, former security consultant. No HOA experience. But he's listed as External Compliance Director on the new paperwork. External. I raised an eyebrow. He doesn't even live in the neighborhood? Correct. Kelly leaned back and steepled her fingers. The new board members appointed him after Priscilla was voted out. He's not elected. He's hired. That night, I reviewed my security footage. I'd had cameras installed months ago after a package went missing, and I never got rid of them. I fast-forwarded through the last week's footage, watching for anything unusual. On Tuesday, just before midnight, a figure appeared near the side gate. Dark clothes.
Gloves. No flashlight.
He crouched near the fence, did something with a small tool, then vanished. I zoomed in. The man had placed something just beneath the fence line. The next morning, I found it. A small black device, camouflaged against the mulch. A wireless sensor. I pried it out with a screwdriver and dropped it into a baggie. Then I called Kelly again. She got me in touch with a private investigator, a retired detective named Marcus Lamont. He picked up the sensor the same day and had it analyzed. It was a motion-activated camera.
Battery-powered. Wi-Fi enabled.
They're not just watching you, he said. They're surveilling you. Without a warrant. That's illegal. We filed a criminal complaint with the county sheriff's office. The deputy who came to take the report was quiet as I showed him the footage and the device. He took it seriously. Said it was part of a broader pattern. There had been other reports from nearby neighborhoods. Same tactics. Same type of equipment. All traced back to one security contractor, McVeigh Risk Solutions. Guess who was listed as CEO? Ronald McVeigh. By the end of the week, the sheriff's office had a warrant. They entered the HOA office with 2 deputies and a tech specialist. Took 6 hard drives, 3 laptops, and several paper files. One of the board members tried to block the door. He was escorted out, handcuffed, for obstruction. The neighborhood was buzzing by Sunday. Word had spread fast, and for once, it wasn't just gossip, it was action. Terrence called a town hall meeting at the community center. Over 40 homeowners showed up. Not one board member did. I brought a projector and walked them through everything: the illegal surveillance, the fraudulent fines, the bogus bylaw changes. Maria spoke up too about the intimidation she'd faced. Even Dylan said a few words about how they'd snooped around the backyard while he was home alone. Then someone asked the question, "What do we do about it?" Kelly, who was seated in the back, stood up. "We file for dissolution." It went quiet. "There's a clause in your original HOA charter," she said. "If 75% of homeowners sign a petition, the HOA can be dissolved and its responsibilities transferred to a community trust. You'd still have shared maintenance, but you'd elect your own representatives. No more unchecked boards. No more outside contractors. By the end of the night, we had 30 signatures. The next week was a blur of door-knocking, porch conversations, and long evenings with clipboards. Some folks were skeptical. Others were angry they hadn't known sooner. But once they saw the evidence photos of the censors, court documents, even the arrest report they signed, it took 9 days to reach the threshold. We filed the petition with the county clerk and notified the HOA's legal team. They tried to stall, claiming procedural errors, but Kelly was ready. She filed a countersuit, arguing that the board had already voided its own authority by violating state privacy laws. 2 weeks later, a Superior Court judge ruled in our favor. The HOA board was officially disbanded. The community trust was formed. An interim committee was elected, 5 residents, no outside contractors. I didn't run. I'd had enough of politics for a lifetime. But I voted for Terrence. He won by a landslide. As for Ronald McVeigh, he was charged with multiple counts of unlawful surveillance and fraud. His company folded within a month. Half his equipment was seized as evidence. The day after the judgment came down, I found a thank you card on my front porch. No name, just a note that said, "For standing up when the rest of us were tired." I pinned it to the fridge. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue. The first real neighborhood gathering in years. Dylan grilled ribs. Maria brought her famous potato salad. Terrence gave a toast. To fences, he said, lifting his glass, that keep out more than just stray dogs.
We laughed.
We ate. We reclaimed our street. And as the sun dipped low behind that perfectly legal 7-foot-tall cedar fence, it cast a long shadow not over lawns, but over everything the old HOA had tried to control. This time, the shadow belonged to us. 3 weeks after the HOA was dissolved, things were finally starting to feel normal again. The new community trust had taken over maintenance duties, and for the first time in years, everyone actually knew who was in charge. There were open meetings every other Thursday. Residents could propose ideas without being silenced, and the trust's budget was posted online for anyone to review. But that calm didn't last long. It started when Dylan came home from school and found a man parked in our driveway. He was standing next to his car, holding a clipboard, wearing no uniform, no name tag, just khakis and a tight polo that looked like it had been ironed by someone angry. Dylan asked who he was. The man didn't answer, just got in his car and drove off. I checked our security footage that evening. The guy had walked up to the side of the house and taken photos of the new fence. Then he snapped pictures of the backyard, the patio cover, and even the side of the garage. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't left a note. But he'd definitely been looking for something. The next morning I found out what. A letter arrived, no return address, plain white envelope, typed with no signature. It claimed to be from a private property regulatory review committee, alleging I was in violation of a county zoning ordinance due to an unauthorized rear setback encroachment. It demanded I voluntarily correct the issue or face legal consequences. I brought the letter to the county zoning office. The woman at the front desk looked confused. "We don't have anything like that," she said. "And we definitely don't send anonymous letters." I asked if she could check whether any complaints had been filed about my property. She typed, squinted at the screen, then frowned. "You've got 6. 6. Noise ordinance. Rear setback. Unpermitted structure. Drainage obstruction. Fence height. And something about pest control non-compliance." I stared at her, silent. She leaned closer and lowered her voice. These were all filed within an hour.
Same day.
Same IP address. I stepped back. "You can trace the IP? We can't. But the sheriff's office can if there's a fraud complaint." I filed one on the spot. That night, I called Marcus Lamont again. I told him someone was trying to weaponize the county systems against me. He didn't sound surprised. "I've seen this before," he said. "Usually it's a shadow group trying to reassert control after losing official power. They try to act like a regulatory body. Sometimes they even form a shell corporation to look legitimate. Can you figure out who's behind it?" "I'll find out." It took him 6 days. He showed up on my porch with a manila folder and a grim expression. Inside were printouts of corporate filings, domain registrations, handwriting samples, and a report from a digital forensics consultant. The so-called Private Property Regulatory Review Committee was a fake. It was registered as a nonprofit based out of a UPS store in the next town over. The registered agent? Gregory Lyles, former treasurer of the now-defunct HOA. But he wasn't working alone. There were 3 names attached to the board of directors, all former HOA members, except one, a man named Curtis Blaine. He was a real estate developer with a long list of civil lawsuits behind him, most of them for trying to seize properties through legal loopholes. Marcus laid it out plainly. They're trying to manufacture violations and pressure homeowners into compliance. Then they offer legal assistance through a subsidiary firm. The goal is to create a paper trail that makes it easier to file liens, even though they don't have the authority to enforce anything. I asked how many homes they'd targeted. "At least 13 that I've confirmed. But only 4 have responded. 1 already paid a fine." I stood up. "Then we're not done." Kelly took the new evidence straight to the state attorney general's office. She filed a complaint for impersonation of a government body, mail fraud, and attempted extortion. The AG's office opened an investigation. Within a week, investigators from the state's white-collar crimes division began knocking on doors, interviewing homeowners who had received letters. They traced the bank account linked to the payment instructions. It was held under a shell company called Civic Enforcement Solutions, LLC. They executed a search warrant at Gregory Lyle's home and found dozens of blank violation forms, a laptop with property surveillance photos, and a draft spreadsheet labeled Target Priority Q3. It listed over 50 addresses. Every one of them had previously voted to dissolve the HOA. 3 arrests were made within 48 hours for conspiracy to defraud, illegal surveillance, and operating a fraudulent enforcement agency. Curtis Blaine wasn't one of them, not yet. He had gone quiet. His office was empty, his phone disconnected, and no one had seen him in days. That's when Marcus got creative. He pulled tax records, traced vehicle registrations, and eventually found a lake house under Blaine's name 2 counties over. He passed the intel to the AG's office. 2 days later, Blaine was in custody. The charges piled up. In addition to fraud and impersonation, they charged him with attempted wire fraud, unauthorized practice of law, and conspiracy to commit civil extortion. The judge denied bail, citing the complexity of the scheme and risk of flight. The fallout was immediate. The community trust held an emergency meeting to inform residents. Kelly presented the evidence publicly, showing how close we'd come to falling under the thumb of a shadow HOA. People were furious, not just scared, angry. A retired firefighter stood up and suggested that every home install a security camera. The trust voted to subsidize installations for any resident who wanted one. Within a month, nearly every house had surveillance. But the most unexpected fallout came from a county. After reviewing how easily the false complaints were entered into the system, the Board of Supervisors initiated a policy review. They implemented stricter verification for all zoning complaints, including a requirement that complainants identify themselves and sign affidavits under penalty of perjury. The anonymous complaint era was over. I kept a copy of the letter they'd sent me, the fake one from the phony regulatory committee. I had it framed and hung it in the garage, not as a trophy, as a reminder. One night, about 2 months later, I saw Dylan staring at it. He asked, "Why'd they keep coming after us?" I told him the truth. Because we didn't fold when they expected us to. He nodded, then pointed to the fence. "You think they'll ever try again?" I looked out at the yard. The grass was green, the lights from the neighbors' porches glowing like fireflies in the distance. The air was quiet. "If they do," I said, "they'll find out we've been sharpening our pencils." The next morning, I walked to the mailbox and found a small package. No return address. Lightweight. I opened it carefully. Inside was a plastic nameplate. Chairman Willow Creek Property Oversight Committee. I turned it over. On the back, someone had written one word in marker. "Nice try." I called the sheriff. They traced the fingerprints to a man named Felix Dre, one of the inspectors from the original HOA who'd vanished after Priscilla's arrest. He tried to jumpstart a new group using the same tactics. But this time, he didn't even get past the mailbox. They booked him for intimidation and tampering with correspondence. The prosecutor called it a last gasp of a dead regime. It felt accurate. After that, things really did settle. The trust expanded services, better lighting, new benches at the park, even a scholarship fund for high school seniors. Dylan applied. He didn't win, but he helped design the logo they use now. A tree wrapped in an open circle. The motto underneath? "Our roots, our rules." 3 months after the trust vote and the arrests, the neighborhood was quieter, but not asleep. There was a different kind of energy in the air. One that hummed beneath the surface. People talked more in driveways. They paused longer at the park benches. The fear was gone, but the awareness had settled in its place like a permanent fixture. Then something new happened. It began when a couple from the east side of the community, Mark and Elena Vasquez, showed up at a trust meeting with a stack of manila folders and a look that said they hadn't slept in days. Terrence gave up his seat without a word. Elena opened the top folder and passed it down the table. Inside were payment receipts, dozens of them dating back nearly 4 years. HOA fees, special assessments, landscaping surcharges, and something called elevation maintenance contributions. The amounts were small at first, $40 here, $65 there, but they added up. Mark had totaled them. Over $22,000. All paid to an HOA fund labeled Reserve Project 17C. When asked what that was, no one could answer, because no one had ever heard of it. Kelly Tran, seated quietly in the back, leaned forward. "Where did these payments go?" Mark pulled out another sheet. It was a copy of a bank statement, one not tied to the HOA's known accounts. The name on the account was Willow Community Reserve Holdings. Elena pointed to the routing number. "This doesn't match any of the bank details on the HOA's filings. We checked everything on the county's public records. This account isn't listed anywhere." Kelly took the document and nodded slowly. "You're saying the HOA operated a shadow fund?" Mark's voice was steady. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Nobody moved. Terrence looked around the room. "How many people paid into this?" Elena pulled out a second sheet. "From what we can piece together based on shared HOA notices and old payment stubs, at least 87 households. Maybe more." Kelly stood and looked at me. "We need to dig deeper. I want to know where every dollar went." What followed was a 3-week unraveling of the largest bait and switch the neighborhood had ever seen. Kelly filed a petition to subpoena all financial records tied to the former HOA, including accounts never disclosed to the state. A judge granted the motion, citing the ongoing fraud investigation. Within days, a forensic accountant named Gemma Ortiz joined the effort, combing through years of invoices, contractor agreements, and internal memos. The picture that emerged was staggering. Reserve Project 17C wasn't a park, or a sidewalk upgrade, or even a drainage plan like some had assumed. It was a private development fund. Specifically, a financing pool for a short-term rental complex that had been under quiet planning just outside the community boundary. The mastermind? Curtis Blaine. He had planned to purchase a parcel of land adjacent to Willow Creek and build 5 luxury rental townhomes, using HOA funds as seed money. The project had been disguised in the books as Community Border Enhancements. The payments were laundered through multiple LLCs and disguised as service contracts, lawn care, pest mitigation, even irrigation studies that never happened. And the worst part? The community had technically signed off on it. Not knowingly, but through the fine print of a special assessment form circulated during the fiscal year 3 years earlier. The language was vague, buried between budget lines, and phrased as long-term community value investments. Most people had just paid what the form asked. Gemma confirmed over $140,000 had been filtered through the fake reserve account. Kelly didn't hesitate. She filed a federal complaint with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud residents under false pretenses. Since the money had crossed state lines through a partner LLC in Nevada, it became a multi-jurisdictional matter. The FBI got involved. I wasn't sure what a federal raid looked like until I saw one with my own eyes. 2 black SUVs pulled up in front of a property owned by one of the former board members, the same guy who had once tried to fine me for irregular mulch coloration. Agents in windbreakers entered the house, walked out with computers, phones, and a box of documents marked HOA 2018-2022. Over the next 2 days, 4 more homes were searched. 3 arrests followed. Curtis Blaine was indicted on multiple counts, including wire fraud, racketeering, and falsifying corporate filings. His bail was denied. The community trust called an emergency session. Kelly recommended the trust file a civil suit to reclaim the stolen funds. A vote was held. Unanimous. I didn't say much during that meeting. I sat near the back, arms crossed, listening, watching. But something didn't sit right. That night, I went home and dug through my garage until I found the old HOA welcome packet, the one they used to give to new homeowners. Tucked inside was a slip of paper I hadn't looked at in years. It was a map, a survey diagram, marked with lot lines, common areas, and future development easements. One section was circled in red ink. The same parcel Curtis had tried to buy. Except according to this, it already belonged to Willow Creek. I brought it to Kelly the next morning. She studied it for half an hour, then cross-referenced the parcel number against county deeds. Her brow furrowed. This wasn't just fraud. They tried to sell land they didn't own. That changed everything. The state's attorney general amended the charges. Attempted land theft,
Forgery.
unauthorized land transfer. The parcel had been listed under a dummy LLC, and a sale agreement had already been drawn up. They were weeks away from closing when we blew the lid off. By summer, the case had gone up to federal court. The trial lasted 12 days. The jury took 4 hours to convict. Curtis Blaine was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. 2 other former board members received 5 and 7 years, respectively. The rest entered plea deals, surrendered assets, and were barred from holding any homeowner association position for life. The community got its money back, most of it anyway. The court ordered asset forfeitures and restitution totaling over $120,000. The trust used it to launch a neighborhood grant fund. Residents could apply to improve their own properties, gardens, solar panels, weatherproofing, whatever made the place stronger. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They tried to steal from us, and we turned it into something better. One afternoon in early fall, I stood at the edge of my property, looking at the fence. The same one they tried to tear down. Now it stood taller, stronger, and gleaming in the late sun. Dylan walked up beside me, holding a small envelope. "This came to the house," he said. "Addressed to you. No return." I opened it. Inside was a photo. It was a picture of my house, taken from a street. The timestamp was from 2 years ago, back when this all started. On the back was a single handwritten line. "You built the first wall." I stared at it for a long time. No threats. No name. Just acknowledgement. I handed it to Dylan. "Frame it." Later that evening, I keyed in the new passcode to the community center. The trust had voted to install security, not because we were scared, but because we'd earned the right to protect what we'd built. Terrence was inside, setting up chairs for the next open meeting. He looked up and smiled. "You sticking around for this one?" I nodded. "Yeah. Thought I'd listen." He handed me a folded agenda. "We're voting on a new playground, a dog run, and a mural for the south wall. Guess who's designing it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Maria's niece. She's going to paint a tree with open roots wrapping around the neighborhood. Said she wants it to look like it's holding us all together." I unfolded the paper and looked at the sketch. It was beautiful. Strong lines, deep roots, open arms. This time, the rules were ours. And the shadows? They belonged to the past.